Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, but you know that, or if you don't, you do now. And in any event, we've got a great guest for you today. His name is John R. Mills. He's an author. He's a podcaster. He's been around the world doing a lot of stuff. And he is also along the same lines that we are, in that we want people to be able to follow their passion, follow their heart, to live the best life that they possibly can. And unfortunately, oftentimes we run into blocks with ourselves and we can't get through it all. Well, John's mission in life is to help make that better for everybody, to be able to follow your passion. And he actually has got a whole website built to it, and his podcast is called Passion Struck. So I highly encourage you to go find that anywhere podcasts are. And John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Well, the reason that we had you back is because you are very similar to what we talk about here just about every day. And it's really cool that somebody else is doing the same work that we're doing, and you do it in a little bit different way, and which is great because it resonates with people differently than what I would do, as an example.
Well, I think the more people that people like us are touching in the world that we live in now, the better it is for all of us.
I couldn't agree more. Now, a lot of people know my story, but they may not know yours on this platform. So tell us a little bit about your story, your background, and how you came to do what you're doing now.
Well, that could take the whole podcast, Kevin. I'll give the abridged version. I started out my career in the military after graduating college and spent a number of tours working primarily for the National Security Agency, and loved the work so much that I wanted to continue it even outside of the military. So I took an appointment to go and become a special agent with the FBI. But unfortunately, that got curtailed because of budget issues. And so I found myself in this desperate position, really, where I had a wife at the time, I had a child on the way, and I had no income because I was no longer in the military. So it caused me to really do a quick pivot because my FBI class got cycled to about 3 years in the future. And that took me down a path that I never really imagined myself going down. And that was becoming a business executive. I started by doing management consulting and then Big Four consulting. But that over time led me into Fortune 500 environments like Lowe's Home Improvement, Dell, where I primarily played in information technology, eventually becoming a CIO at Dell, and then transitioning over time to private equity, where I became the chief operating officer and then CEO of a couple private equity run companies. But along the way, I had gotten this calling that I didn't know what to do with. And it was a calling that I believe to be spiritual in nature, where I was being asked to start serving the broken, the battered, the beaten, the lonely, the helpless, the hopeless of the world. And I'm not sure about you, but when you get a calling like that completely out of the blue, and I had no idea who those people were, it's not something you're just ready to leave a six-figure position and a title to go and pursue. For me, it was a journey of wake-up calls that we could go into, but it ultimately led to an incident where I was held up by gunpoint in 2017 by an intruder who was in my home. And shortly thereafter, one of my best friends committed suicide. And those two events kind of really brought me back to this calling. And I said, what am I waiting for? And over the past 7 or 8 years, I've gotten really crystal clear on who I am supposed to be helping. And that is so many people who feel lost right now throughout the world who you're trying to help as well. And that's what brought me to form Passion Struck, write the book, everything I'm doing today.
Well, and by the way, that was a great Reader's Digest version of it, because I know there's a whole lot more to it. But I wanted to ask you, where do you think the calling came from?
I think we're best positioned to serve the person we once were. And in my case, I didn't even realize I was that person. But as I look back now upon my life, I certainly was. And I think when we hear those words, we shouldn't, beaten, broken, bored, hopeless, lonely, we certainly wouldn't want to use it as a marketing words for our company or our personal brand. And I think seeing myself in one of those words was difficult because when I hear them on the surface, um, I guess I had the same reaction to hearing it then that a priest had a month or so ago when I told him I had this calling. And he said, well, I've got a great position for you at St. Vincent de Paul, where you can help the homeless. And that is a very needy cause. It's something that I've done in the past with cold weather shelters and stuff like that. But I was trying to tell him that the people I'm trying to help, it's a much broader and global group than that. And I don't think he understood exactly what I was talking about. And I think there's so many people today who have this longing and they don't feel they belong. They don't feel that they're significant. They don't feel like they're valued. And all you got to do is look at some statistics from the Belonging Barometer, which the American Immigration Council puts out, which has some pretty startling statistics. 64% of people feel excluded in the workforce, 74% feel excluded in their communities, and 17% feel like they have no sense of belonging at any point in their life. And that's just in the United States. You take this on a global picture, and you're talking for potentially 5 billion people who are feeling like they're one of these different categories. And so that pervasive issue and seeing how it's now leading to divisiveness and other things is what made me realize how big an issue this is to solve, and how could I do my part as Malcolm Gladwell says, of trying to create a tipping point where we fix this.
And we're all strike that. Many of us, okay, strike that. Some of us are actually interested in helping humanity heal itself and to move forward so that everybody can live the life that they were destined to live. I firmly believe that there are 8 billion people on the planet, and we were all destined to do something special because that's why we're here. Now, it may not be to do like Passion Struck or Positive Talk or any of those. It may be just being somebody who takes care of the water in your village that they didn't have before, or and just a multitude of other things. But we're all here to do something with ourselves. But our stories and the stories that people tell us about who we really are isn't really who we really are. Does that make sense?
No, I mean it is. As I look back and I read about this in my book Passion Struck, I was wearing what I call the mask of pretense. I was pretending to be something that I wasn't, because I think a lot of us pretend. We try to emulate what society wants us to do, and it ends up causing us to chase all the wrong things in life that are never going to bring us happiness or fulfillment. And you asked me earlier, like, why do I think I got this message? It's because to put it in perspective, I'm a senior executive. I'm at Lowe's at the time. I had just turned around a group successfully. I was asked to take on, by the CIO, the dream job that everyone wanted to run software development and data operations for the company. And I get into this job, and I just was having trouble concentrating. I felt like I wasn't who I was. I felt disconnected with myself. I felt disconnected from my family. I felt disconnected from friends. And what had been happening in the background is I had dysthymia and didn't know it. And I had this low grade depression, which had now become a moderate level depression because I was under constant stress for so long that it was causing me to burn out. And it was starting to show signs in me of hopelessness and numbness to life itself. So I think I was getting the calling because I could be a vessel to serve others because I know what it feels like to go through this.
And I just have to say this because you were a six-figure executive and you were doing really, really quite well. And you, I'm sure at one point said, that's not exactly what I want to do. And I want to do something else. And I want to make it people-centered and to help people live their best lives. And I'm sure that somebody in your world said, now, John, let's talk about this for a minute. You've got a really, really good job. You're doing really, really good things. You're making a lot of money for your house. And then you're going to embark upon this thing that you have no earthly idea if you're going to make any money or not. How is that going to work for you? Did you have anybody like that in your life?
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, yeah, of course, my ex-wife at the time and my career coach and my peers who I would talk to about it, and I would never bring it up to them directly. I would kind of bring it up to them that I was looking to try to volunteer or to do something in the church where I could start doing this other thing. And but it's difficult when you're in that position to even wrap your mind around what it is you're supposed to do. And at that time, I certainly didn't see myself in the people I was being called to serve, because I think we get so busy in life that we get distracted and we stop doing the inner work that really gets us back to our core. And it wasn't until I kind of stepped away after that incident I experienced and did really 2 soulful years of really getting to the heart of uh, what I felt my inherent talents were, and then convinced myself that I've been able to build a career once. I could reinvent myself and do this all over again. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be comfortable. It wasn't going to be an easy path. But if I felt conviction, and I felt passion, then I could drop everything else and make it work. And for me, that's what I needed to do, because every time I had a safety net, I kept falling back on the safety net instead of just giving it 100% to do what I was called to do. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you, Kevin, but
Oh,
probably
yeah.
does to some of your listeners.
It makes perfect sense to me because that's the entire way I got into doing radio. I had no earthly idea. Knew I wanted to do something for humanity, something different, but I had no idea. But the universe and God, however you want to phrase it, he set it up for me to do the things that I needed to do to get to where I needed to be. And then suddenly they provided me with opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to go down that road. And 20 years, 23 years later, this is where I ended up, is talking to wonderful people like you about how we can help other people, because we've been through it ourselves now. We can help other people live the life that they truly want to live, but don't really know how. And a lot of people are scared because they don't know how. By the way, we're talking with John R. Mills. You can go to his website, which is, there's a couple of them. One of them is passionstruck.com, correct?
Correct.
And the other one is, oddly enough, johnrmills.com. And so you can go find him in either of those places. We need to take a really quick break. But when we come back, I want to explore more of this idea of what you're doing now and how it is impacting people around you in a great way. You've got over 500 podcasts up. That's awesome. And you have a plan. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin at kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin McDonald, and we're talking with John R. Mills. He's a podcaster. He's an author. He's got a great book out, which is called, oddly enough, Passion Struck. He's now deeply, deeply, deeply involved in his second book. And so he's very committed to that. And we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show a little bit. But I would really like to know, now that you are on this path, you've got a team, you've got all kinds of things that you're out there working on. Did you foresee this as part of your passion project, or has this evolved over time?
I think when you go into these things, it's easy to put out a direction you want to go and to have goals for how you want to accomplish it. But I think what ends up happening is the universe kind of takes you, no matter how you try, in the direction it wants to take you in, and you kind of have to be willing to flow with the spirit when it comes into you to adjust. So I don't think I ever thought I would start with the podcast. I originally thought I was going to lead with the book, get into public speaking, do all those things, and then maybe down the line I'd start the podcast. I didn't really expect that it would come first and then all these other things would follow. And I think the other thing I didn't really expect was that I would want to take this into television programs, documentaries, even starting my own television program, classes, and all the things that we're now getting into at the time. So for me, I had an initial vision of what I wanted, and my initial stages were just trying to build the foundation for building something in the future and doing the hard work and investing in that. And all these other things have emerged as a result. And it's something that we always talked about at Lowe's as a right of way, meaning, Lowe's as being a retailer. What people don't realize is it also has one of the most sophisticated supply chains. In fact, the founder, Sam Walton of Walmart, credited the founder of Lowe's of creating the modern supply chain. So you can make money in so many different ways than your primary business model. And that's what the right of way is all about.
Interesting. And describe a little bit more about what the right of way is.
So in the case of Lowe's, over in China at the time when I was with them, and again, this is probably at this point 18 years ago, boy, how time flies, but we had the most modern supply chain operation in China because we were building so many of the Lowe's private branded products over there, and then we were shipping it over containers going through we would go into the either Long Beach or East Coast like Savannah, bring it into these unloading sections, cross stock it to other products. And we were able to take that whole business model and help other businesses do it and scale it. So completely unrelated from the retail business was this ancillary business that you could make money off of. I think for a lot of companies, a web presence became an extension or right away off the brick and mortar business, that they were able to sell and carry more products and service more needs in that same way. But it could be another thing Lowe's got into was trying to be the general contractor of choice. So having a whole services business where outside of the store, they could come into your house and provide different services, from designing a kitchen and then installing it, to installing air conditioning or heating system or roofing systems, or even outside the home doing landscaping for you, or fertilizer or anything else. So those are examples of right-of-ways.
Gotcha. And it was, I would call it something like diversified income and different income streams that they were creating in addition to their core business. They were creating these income streams that could help the business along the way. I'll call it write-ups, right, whatever you called it,
Right-of-ways.
right-of-ways from now on. So when you were developing your business and your business model, did you find this happened for me? Did you find that events just kind of showed up that would then lead you down a little bit different of a path? Like at one point you were going to write a book, and then at one point you decided to do a podcast. Was that something that you thought a great deal about, or did it just kind of show up for you? And then the ability to do that podcast showed up for you?
So I think I had the dilemma that a lot of people face. I had spent a lot of time in the corporate world. While I was in the corporate world, none of the companies I worked for really were concerned about me having a personal brand or an online marketing engine that was all about publicizing John and how great he is. And so when I came out of that environment, I didn't really have a social brand. I had a LinkedIn profile. At the time, my Instagram account was all pictures of myself. My Facebook was all pictures of myself. I didn't have a YouTube, none of that. And so as I started to talk to book agents, all of them came back to me and said, you're this business guy who now wants to help people live intentionally and get into behavior science and do all this stuff. You're not known for that at all. You don't have a track record of doing that at all. You don't have a platform for doing any of that. And you're not known out of what you're doing. So you need to show us that the stuff you're talking about is actually going to resonate with people and they're going to want to buy your products. And so at the time I started the podcast, it was in the middle of COVID and I couldn't public speak, or if you were going to public speak, it was kind of like in this format. So I can't really judge an audience reaction to what I'm talking about. So I looked at all the mediums that were out there and I decided that the best way for me to reach people one-to-one and to start building traction on this was I could write about it through blogs, and which I started to do, and I could start the podcast. And at the same time I started the podcast, I might as well start a YouTube channel. So that all became phase one of the business, because there was no reason to write the book until I tested the content out, and which ended up being a great thing because it allowed me to really fine tune the content much more crisply than I would have had I not had the show.
Well, the interesting thing about podcasts is I know you're sitting in your room or in a room and you're sitting there by yourself. I'm sitting in a room by myself, but we are being listened to by people around the world. But we don't know that. We have to assume that, but we don't get to see them, and we have no idea what the impact we're having on them is. And so that is a great way when you started the podcast to really define your message so that when you wrote the book, it would be more successful. Is that kind of the thought pattern or how it ended up being?
Yeah, it started out as just being a great way to try content out and to see what was resonating and what wasn't resonating. And then as I got more and more clear on who the audience was, who the people I was trying to help, who these helpless, hopeless, etc. people really were, I started honing the message more and more and more as I got more crystal clear on my messaging, how I wanted to approach it, etc. And it then started hockey sticking. Um, so I knew that I was onto something, and then I just doubled down on it.
When you say when you say hockey sticking, and I know that's for us podcasters to know, but that is the idea that like a hockey stick is curved, and all of a sudden it went from nothing to all of a sudden you're a thing suddenly.
Yeah, I think like anyone, I think we all go into these podcasts thinking immediately we're going to put it out in the world, and you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of listeners. And my experience is it doesn't work that way. I was just at the Podfest conference in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and over the course of time, there have been 4.7 million podcasts that have been started. They're kind of somewhere in the neighborhood of 420, 450,000 that are active any given week producing new episodes. But even if you look at that, it's a lot of content that's out there, and it's a lot of different channels for people to consume. And some of the podcasts that have done extremely well had that early traction of starting 10, 14, 15 years ago, like Lewis Howes did with his podcast. Joe Rogan did. John Lee Dumas did with Entrepreneurs on Fire. Emily Morse did with Sex with Emily. Jordan Harbinger did. And so it's hard to break through initially, but what happened to me over time is I went from having 25 downloads to 50 downloads to 100 downloads to now my episodes do between 130 and 180,000 downloads, and we're up to over 60 million downloads for the show. So it has just grown exponentially faster than I ever in a million years thought it possibly could.
Well, congratulations, by the way. That is really a cool number. And in the podcast industry, that just doesn't happen. And even when you mentioned those 420,000 podcasts that are active at any given time, the truth of the matter is 95% of podcasts quit after 20 episodes or less. And they call that podcast fade because it's not easy to develop a program and a show, an idea, and to pull it off and to make it work. So congratulations, you're doing really, really well.
Thank you. And I was really fortunate. I got to be the master of ceremonies for the Podcast Hall of Fame this year. And I got to meet these 11 phenomenal inductees who've all been doing this for a very long time. Most of them, in fact, I think all of them for over 10 years. And when you hear their stories and what they had to do which was just a fledgling industry at the time to what it is now, it really gave me a true appreciation for just how much hard work and dedication they have put into this. And it's because of them that people like me are here today. And I've learned so much by watching them. And I think that's what helped me make my craft better over time, was the examples that they set. So it was really a profound honor to be there. And one of the things I really talked about was one of the guys who got an award was Lou Mongello. And Lou has been doing this podcast about Disney for 15 years or so now. But he was talking about how when he was doing it, there have been so many cancer patients, other people with health conditions who look to Disney as an inspiration, as something that's giving them hope. And it's something that I think we who are in this industry sometimes take for granted. We don't know what the other person is going through on the other side of this picture. And they could be in a really hard spot. They could even be contemplating suicide or something else. And the words that we use and the advice we give, it matters. It could change the trajectory of someone's life. And I think that is what the real gift of being in this industry is it's not like typical news media. We get to cultivate an audience. We get to talk to them one-on-one in a very unique way. And I really feel blessed to have that opportunity and that profound honor.
I as well, young man. I as well. And by the way, we're talking with John R. Miles, and go to his website, johnrmiles.com or passionstruck.com, and you can find out all about him. And he's got videos and a store and learning all about him and the book and all that kind of stuff. So go there and find out about him. We need to take our station break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the future for you. What do you see kind of happening? Where do you see yourself going? How, dare I say it, big are you going to be? We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And John R. Miles is with us. He is an author and he's a podcaster. And he is dedicated his life, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think this is true. He has dedicated his life into helping other people live the best lives that they can and to get rid of some of the stories and some of the things and some of the gook that may be going on in their life that is preventing them from becoming who they really are. Is that a fair analysis? Have I misstated it?
Well, I am trying to help people understand that the key to living the life that you want, that you aspire to have, is to be intentional about shaping it and to focus on the things that really matter to you and matter to how you want to shape the world. So you were just showing an ad for Covenant House, which I think is a great transition point for what I mean by this. Covenant House, as I understand their mission, is really trying to help youth who've got no other point in their life, no support system, no nothing. And it helps them to feel noticed, to feel acknowledged. It's giving them a bed to sleep on. It's giving them a support system that they wouldn't have. And I think there are so many people today who are growing up in homes where that is happening, where historically they would have felt it, but now people are so disconnected from one another. It's happening in households all over the world. So what I'm really trying to showcase is how one's actions hold weight, and that one's presence makes a meaningful difference in the world. It's the foundation of human significance. It's the invisible thread that ties us to others and gives our lives depth, resonance, and direction. So that is what I'm trying to help people understand, and that it's ultimately our intentional choices that we make that end up shaping that meaningful difference.
When you say intentional choices, where do those intentional choices come from? Is it intuition? Is it by something that you read, something that you just song that you heard? Where does that in that intentionality come from?
Yeah, I think if you want to look into this further, a lot of the work I do comes from behavior science. So a great book that I would advocate, other than my own, to get started on this journey, but would be pick up Katie Milkman's book, How to Change. She's a professor at University of Pennsylvania, and in it, she shows how the choices that you make shape the future and outcomes that you want to achieve. And really, what it comes down to is the reason my podcast is an alternative health podcast is our choices end up shaping every direction of our life, from our emotional health to our spiritual health, our relationships, our mental health, our physical health. So if you want to, the easiest one to talk about is if you want to get in better physical health, then you need to start making choices, intentional choices that get you closer to that. So that comes down to the choice of, are you going to order a hamburger and on the side get a side salad, or are you going to get French fries? Are you going to get in the discipline of going to the gym and making the intentional choice to do so? Are you going to make the intentional choices to try to avoid sugar, to try to avoid complex carbohydrates? All of these choices shape who we become, and that's just an example of it. But it also comes into our relationships. After a hard day, working in whatever you do, it is so easy to come home and to be disengaged and to not want to have to deal with anything and to isolate and to go pour yourself a drink and just veg out. It takes a lot more intentionality to say, I'm going to come home and I'm going to be present for my wife. I'm going to come home and be present for my kids, no matter what my day has been like, and to show up in the best way that I possibly can. And those are the decisions that I try to help people make, and to see the long-term consequences of where not making them leads their lives.
And in the work that you do, I noticed that you have a little quiz that people can take. Talk about what's in that quiz.
Yeah. So as I was writing the book, I was trying to figure out how can someone understand where they sit on the journey that I call it to becoming passion struck. Meaning, if you want to eventually over time become your self-realized self, like how do you scorecard yourself today? So this is kind of a simple quiz. You can find it right at the top of passionstruck.com. That consists of 20 questions, takes about 10 minutes to complete. And what I describe in the book are really 5 different stages on this path to becoming passion struck. And I start out with one that I call a subsister. I then go into an imitator, a vanquisher, an orchestrator, and then to a creative amplifier. And I'll just pick 2 to kind of describe it. So an imitator is someone who is very much immersed into group think. They don't really have a strong sense of their own thought, of their own intrinsic worth. They tend to follow the crowd, get very influenced by what their peer group says or what the people who surround their greater group do. And because of that, they kind of become conditioned to what the group think is. For millennia, this is what happened when people lived in tiny villages, and that group think of that tiny village really influenced them and isolated them. But now, as we're more in a global village, what I'm trying to get to see people to do is to think broader than that. And so when you get to become someone that I call an orchestrator, you're really an independent thought leader. You're letting your ego go. You're not listening as much to the group think, but you're making your own calculated decisions with intention and shaping your life the way that you want it to come, with the important twist that you're not really thinking locally alone. You're thinking more on a broad global basis of what you're trying to achieve, and most importantly, how it is helping society to become a better place for us all.
What is it that we do to defeat that? Because it seems like a lot of us think along the lines of, I would really like to do this and I would really like to do this. But when it comes down to it and you get home from work and you have a choice of going to the gym or not going to the gym, a lot of us go, I'm tired, I'll go tomorrow. How do we fix that?
Kevin, you froze up on me, so I missed the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was a good question too. You would have liked it. I can't remember. That was so long ago.
I know. I heard you say, we all have these great intentions. We all want to do this. We all want to kind of achieve what we want to achieve, go to the gym, but then I lost you.
Oh, got it. Because then what happens is we come home and we sit down. My wife is not in a very good mood. I don't feel very good about being there. And so I could go to the gym, but then I'm tired and it's like, oh, heck with that. I'm not going to do that. And we do that, in a lot of our lives. And that kind of defeats us. Why do we do that to ourselves?
Yeah. I love this term that I've been using now for a long time, called visionary arsonist. And let me just talk about this from the standpoint of a business. So I'm sure anyone who's been in a business has been part of a project team. And maybe you've seen a project team that, despite all the things that you want to accomplish, all the good intentions that you have, as the project goes, things happen. You lose the sight of the main thing that you were trying to solve. You get inundated with meetings. The project starts going out of budget or out of timeline. People come and go off and on the project. And what I mean by all these examples is we end up arsoning the very thing that we want to achieve, in this case, the positive outcome of that project. Well, we do the same things to our lives, as you were describing. We have these long-term goals that we want, and then we let our mind get in the way and of actively doing them. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else of this at times. I think a great example of this is, I make these New Year's resolutions that I'm going to regularly go to Toastmasters. The chapter I like to go is 35 minutes away, and then it becomes so easy to make excuses for why I don't go, because I've got work to do, I'm too tired to make the drive, whatever. But I'm arsoning the very thing I want to achieve by connecting with people, by learning how to be a better speaker, by perfecting my craft, by moving myself to the next level as a public keynote presenter. And the more you make those excuses, the more you are an arsonist to that, and the more frequency it ends up happening. So then it comes down to, how do you break that cycle of arson and get yourself the traction that you need to start developing the habits to get back on track?
That's really interesting. Now, like in my world, I have a bit of a spiritual bent to me, and a lot of times it's a matter of just saying yes to things that are presented to me, and hopefully they're, after doing a little bit, and I do my due diligence and a little bit of research, but these things are just presented to me in a real positive way, and so I tend to act on them, and most of them seem to work out pretty well. Is that a good barometer to use, or am I needing medication?
I think when things are presented to you, it's just about looking at how much you can put on your plate. And I think the thing I have struggled with a lot in my life is I would say yes to too many things to the point that it was depleting my intention from doing the most important things extremely well. And so that is something I'm very conscious of now. I get a lot of things presented to me, and I think one of the biggest gifts I've learned is how to say no to some of them that, I mean, sound great, but really don't adhere to the core of what I'm trying to accomplish and who I'm trying to influence with my message, because it's so easy to get caught up in something and for it to swing you from side to side. And so I think that's the balance that you have to keep is seeing these things when they come to you and doing that evaluation of, where does this fit into my life, and how much time can I possibly dedicate to it that I can give it 100% effort. Because if I can't give it 100% effort, I'm going to show up as a shell of myself, and I'm not going to deliver what I'm capable of delivering.
And that is the really the crux of the matter, because you've only got 24 hours in a day, and you've only got so much energy. And the older that the older I get, the less energy I seem to have to do all kinds of different stuff. So, but I get it. And by the way, again, we're talking with John R. Mills. Go to his website, which is johnrmills.com or passionstruck.com. And you can find out all about him and listen to his podcast. He's got 500 episodes. And so that would be, and they're all on really cool topics. And so you're going to have to come back, and we're going to have to talk more about some of the other topics that you have been part of. So we need to take a really quick break. It's only 30 seconds. So relax. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back more with John.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And that, by the way, that's me. That's me, heaven's sakes. And John R. Mills is our guest. And we're talking about the work that he's doing. He's gone from being in the military to being a CEO and a CEO. All those letters that you had behind your name at one point. You've been very successful in business. And now you're very successful in the podcasting world, and you've got a book out called Passion Struck, and I highly recommend that. You've got some great reviews on that book, and you've got a second book coming. I promised that we would mention that. Are we allowed to mention that? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm still developing the overall framework for the book, but it's really going to be on one of the greatest epidemics that I am seeing today, and that's that we are disconnected not only from each other, but more importantly, we're disconnected from ourselves. So how do you fix that inner disconnection so that you show up and you matter not only to yourself, but in how others feel that you matter in their lives, and then how you matter in theirs. So I'm excited about this book. It's something that I've felt like I've been called to do, and it complements what I wrote about in Passion Struck, and kind of really brings my personal experience into play throughout the book, because I'm using so many stories from my life and then complementing it with research and interviews that I've done with experts in the field.
And experts in the field of why we are so disconnected from each other?
Well, experts in the field of happiness, experts in the field of connection, experts in the field of neuroscience, and what causes us to experience things like burnout. Experts in human flourishing and self-transcendence. And how do these things that range from how we show up for other people, how we practice active listening, which is becoming a very lost skill, how we really hold our presence to others has such a ripple effect on not only how we feel about ourselves, but how we make other people feel.
I love the topic of lost listening, or the lack of ability to actually listen to somebody, because most of us spend all of our time when we're having a conversation deciding what we're going to say next. Well, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, because we should listen better to what the other person is actually saying versus what we think they may be saying, and then responding to something that may not be true at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And so I'm a firm believer in my management career. When I was in sales and I had people working for me and stuff, I was always curious to know how well they listened, because that becomes a great salesperson, is if you can listen to what the needs of the client is, and then work to meet those needs rather than selling what you want the client to buy. You're in a much better position in the sales world, and you make the customer happier. At least that was my opinion.
Well, I was recently doing an interview with Dr. Allison Wood Brooks. She has the most popular course at Harvard Business School, and I love the name of her course. It's How Do You Talk Gooder in Life and in Business. But as we were talking about, her name of her book is Talk, and she has this talk framework. But we were talking about listening, and we don't really realize it, but when we listen to someone, we're either making them feel seen or unseen. In many ways, it's like holding up a mirror to ourselves, because in every person we talk to, just like I'm doing in this conversation with you, you and I are different, but we have a ton in common, as well as all humans do. And when we really listen to someone else, we learn from them how to see ourselves in a different way, and reflect that back to that other person. But so many people today aren't actively listening because they're too distracted.
Yeah, that's true. Distracted by social media, their smartphone, the world going on around them, that they're not listening to what's being said right in front of them in a lot of cases. And that's too bad. And I'm looking forward to you writing this book. What are you going to call it, by the way? Any idea?
Right now, I'm still working on titles, so I can't let that out
Titles
of
are
the bag.
hard.
I can't. Yeah, a title. Yes, titles are very difficult, and unfortunately, depending on what publisher you pick, sometimes they end up changing them. And it's interesting because my book Passion Struck just got picked up in Korea, and they're trying to ask me about the book and do I approve it. And so I get this book back, and it's all in Korean. I'm like, what does it say? Does it even say it's called Passion Struck anymore? And the answer was they had changed the name of it because that name didn't reflect well in Korean culture. And then they changed the cover because over there the concept of a flame they didn't think would resonate well. So the whole book looks completely different, and that's what publishers do. So I am kind of going down a lane of what I think I want it to do, but I haven't yet picked the final title.
It must be really disheartening when you write a book, you think it's awesome. It's just awesome. And then you send it to an editor and they say, yeah, this ain't so good. Let me work on it and I'll come up with some better ways to do it. And then they do it. And then it goes to a publisher and they say, we could change it this way and change it that way and stuff. That must be, especially because it's kind of like you're birthing this thing that you call a book, and you've got lots of sweat and blood and tears into it. And then people are saying, yeah, it's not so good. That must be infuriating.
It's interesting. I'm taking a completely different approach this time. So the first time I wrote the book more in isolation because I was kind of self-critical about what I was writing, etc. And I didn't share a lot until it started going to some editors to start looking at it. This time I'm reaching out to a lot more people, trying to get their feedback as I'm writing it. And I kind of have an editor now working with me throughout the whole book, hoping to help me short circuit the 20 revisions that I had to do on Passion Struck and maybe lessen it to 10 instead of 20. But
I really admire you authors. I really do, because it's, you've got something in your brain and something in your mind, and you write it, and then somebody says, let's change it. But anyway, John R. Mills has been our guest. And John, before we go, I want you to tell our audience anything that you would like them to know, and how you can be reached, and perhaps a message to our listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me on the show again, and for Brushwood Media, who you're part of. It's a great organization, and I love what Stephen is building with it and the impact that all those shows are having. I would say, going back to what we were talking about, transformation starts with the micro choices that we make. It's these small intentional decisions day in and day out that shape the future, that ends up becoming our legacies. So a key thing that if you're watching this, listening to this, ask yourself, who in my life can I make feel valued today? It might be as simple as a heartfelt compliment, an undistracted conversation, given we were talking about that, or even just expressing gratitude. Because when we start to contribute value in the way that comes from our heart, it truly makes others count, and it allows us to invest our energy where it truly counts. Because the beauty of showing people that they matter is that it doesn't require monumental effort. It's in the small intentional acts that we perform that ripple outward. So if you'd love to learn more about me and what I'm doing, passionstruck.com would be a great place. You can find my book, Passion Struck, wherever books are sold, and the podcast you can find wherever podcasts are, but Spotify or Apple seem to be the top two.
And I have really enjoyed having you on the show. It's and you've been on before. You're going to be on again, I think. I do believe, because your information is so good, and it can really help a lot of people. So I'm appreciative that you came on the show, and I wish you all really well on your podcast and the new book coming out, and I think it's going to be highly successful.
Thank you so much. And before that book comes out, I also wrote a children's book, so I hope that one hits the street before this longer form one.
No, we didn't even talk about that one. We'll have to invite you back and talk about that one as well. And I didn't know you knew Stephen. Isn't he a great guy?
Yeah, he's great.
So thanks again for being here, John. Go to passionstruck.com and get all the information you need about him and his work. And again, thank you so much for being here. And everybody, have an awesome day, would you please? Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.